But yeah, so what we're going to do in the session is we're going to talk about how to recognize and reward community members. Jason's going to facilitate this. And part of the reason why I suggested this for the schedule was there are so many different ways in which people can actively play a role in communities. And we often talk about how we recognize and reward our most active members in communities. And there are so many great examples of that in practice. But the only thing I'd like to encourage for this conversation is that we look at the full life cycle, right? So, we talked about this in one of the earlier sessions today at CLS. From what I can tell, 4 in 5 people in a community will never interact, they'll never write anything, they'll just consume, they'll just watch and consume the value of the community. And then 1 in 5 people will be active. But that means there's a lot of people out there most people who are just kind of observing a community. How do we get them to kind of come in and start dipping their toes in and participating? And then how do we recognize different types of participation? And then how do we recognize and reward the most active members of our community? So that's kind of the scope of the conversation. But, Jason, this is your show. What would you like to start digging into?
Well, I was on a couple of other sessions earlier. Did you invite people that wanted to talk is that something that we should do?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to come and join the stage here, just let me know. Just let me know and I can add you as a panelist. I can convert you into a panelist. And I just got a text from Guy Martin, apparently is going to join.
Oh yeah, I asked Guy to join. I asked a couple people to join, but I don't see them in the attendee list yet. So anyway, if they pop in, we'll get them on there. I actually see one of my correspondents in there, David Both. Maybe he wants to jump in. He's said many times, he's been part of our opensource.com community, and said many times that we've recognized him for his volunteerism and efforts more than his employer has. So it's always nice, when you're doing a good thing, when you hear that kind of praise, and we really appreciate that, David.
All right, I'm adding David as a panelist again. Is there anyone else that wants to join in? Just pop it into the chat. Make sure it says, actually, I'll see everything in the chat. So, and then David, you will maybe have an issue putting your camera on. So I'm going to make you a co-host, and now you can switch your camera on. Looks like Guy's going to join us too. I've sent him in the link. So we'll have a few people that can kind of dig in. And then what we're going to do as well is just as everyone types things into the chat, we'll read those things out as well.
Cool. Yeah, well, I think maybe I'll just start off with a little bit of background. So maybe why I'm somewhat qualified to talk about this. So I did read the book, Jono. It's kind of like, as I was reading, I was like, oh, we did that. Oh, we did that too. I'm talking about people powered. It's just kind of nice to have that reinforcement of, when you're working with community, having that framework to say, hey, actually, there is a framework for this. We just had to figure it out the hard way. When we launched opensource.com in 2010, and hey, Guy, thanks for joining. And at first it was just like a couple people at RedHat volunteering, 10% of their time to make this thing happen. And eventually, like 2 years into it, we figured out hey, there's actually people from all over the world that are actually participating in this, and we didn't really have anything set up. And then we started to put some structure around it, and we launched our first version of the open source. We called them moderators back then, the opensource.com community moderators. And we started with 4 people and quickly grew it to 5 to 6 to 10. And I think maybe the first thing I would just mention is when you're building this community and you're thinking about doing a reward system, ask people what they want to do, right? So ask them what they're interested in, ask them how they want to participate. And that's pretty much how we started to figure out what people wanted to do and kind of shape this kind of reward system. And one of my favorite parts of kind of designing a program like that is, I think, Jono, you refer to it as submarine rewards or submarine.
Oh yeah.
In the book. And it's when somebody is participating in your community, they do something and you reward them, but they don't know they're going to get it. And that's the best part, because we set something up where when you have your third article published on opensource.com, you become part of our contributor club. And that's basically, it's not really written down in too many places, but when we reach out to you and say, hey, we'd like to send you a small gift to express our gratitude. And a week later, they get a nice notebook, a pen, and some stickers in the mail. And they're not expecting it. And 9 times out of 10, it shows up on social media. And it's a nice, on my side, it's kind of tough work, right? I've got to go order the swag. I got to ship it. I got to, get it out there. And we actually like to do handwritten thank you notes. And that's always a nice personal touch. So anyway, I'll start there. I want to see maybe any commentary from David on his participation in the opensource.com community and the moderator program and now the correspondent program.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, just a little bit higher. Nope. All right, well, David, while we're waiting on that, maybe Guy, any comments from you to get started?
Well, yeah, I want to know where my swag is. I think I've written at least 3 articles, right? I'm still waiting for my swag.
You may have to do it.
It's in the mail.
It's in the mail, right? It's in the mail. I'm like, yeah, I was waiting for that, but no, I mean, I think it's a great way to get people involved. I mean, I know, so I give Jason a hard time, but I still do have my opensource.com like tracksuit jacket somewhere at the house. But yeah, those are the kind of things that when you're not expecting them, I think it really, you're right, it gives somebody something that they can then go and the kind of the ancillary benefit is they go and they talk about it to other people and they're like, oh, that's, it's part of all, Jono talks about on-ramps and making people want to join your community and giving them things that kind of show that you care about what they're contributing. So
and I would just say, right? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I would just say, I actually use opensource.com as an example. It's like one of my main presentations that I give on communities, and we're talking about incentives and rewards. I think one of the things that, and I promise you, I'm not just saying this because Jason's a friend and all the rest of it, but what that team has done is genuinely make writers feel taken care of, and that's the fundamental element. And to me, it's one part of it is, for example, I remember there was one of the meetings in Raleigh and you got everybody like these little plaques with, awards on. And then, a Bluetooth speaker would show up with the open source logo stamped on the front of it. There was like swag was one component of it, but a lot of it, I think as well, was just a real sense of like the team caring and then engaging and interacting with writers and saying, oh, is there anything we can help with? Or looking at the burden of the writing process. Like, there's a lot of people who like writing, but they don't like editing. There it is. Perfect.
We have
Great
examples.
Yeah, I've got my 2 down here as well. And it's like, those things stick out. Like, you remember those. I remember those plaques a lot more than I remember some t-shirt that someone sent me like for something. So I think for me, the overarching umbrella that wraps around it is a sense of being taken care of, that the people who are running the community that you're a member of really do care about your success. And that's shared. And that causes this like viral effect where I'm sure you've experienced this, Jason, that a lot of people will probably come to opensource.com because somebody else said, oh, you should come and join. Like, it's a really cool community of people. So
yeah, I'm
missing my plaque too. I'm missing my plaque too, Shivy. What's the deal?
Man, I'm
seeing all these great things.
I'm
seeing all these great things. And I'm like, Amber, help me out here. Like,
the best thing was when they sent us all the best thing was when they sent us all Teslas. I mean, that was amazing.
Great.
Sorry, Guy, you missed out,
great.
dude.
Apparently.
I'm trying to figure out how to get in this club now. Like,
yeah, exactly. Doesn't it make you want to get in the club?
I know, right?
And that's part of it too. To make it's you feel like a special group of people, right? So we're creating a tribe, and you're going to have community members who, if they know there's a t-shirt at the end of the road, they're going to do everything they can to get the t-shirt. And that's just a different type of motivation. I will just point out, since Jono and talked about some of the swag, like we do, since I don't have budget to pay writers, right? We everyone's volunteering there except for staff. We invest in quality swag. Like I'm not getting you the cheap $5 t-shirt. Right? I'm going to give you something quality that you're going to want to wear. And we, I will sometimes like get feedback on designs and things of that from our core community members. But yeah, definitely use it as an investment. And Jono, I invited Brian here. I think I made him a panelist. I don't know if he's on video or not, but Brian is actually
again. Yeah, there we go. Okay, you should be able to, Brian, you continue camera on now.
Brian's working on a really cool project. I'll drop the link in the chat, but Brian, do you want to talk about this incentivizing and rewarding participants guidebook that you're working on?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Happy to. Thanks for the opportunity. Wasn't expecting this, but hey, this is the spirit of all things open and the CLS. So thanks everybody. And actually, this is just sort of an offshoot of a conversation I was having in the chat, with Jonathan, who was asking about different ways to reward contributors. So I'll back up and I'll say that I work with a community, a Red Hat supported upstream community called the Open Source Way. And the Open Source Way is a collaboratively written guidebook for open source community managers and architects. And it's kind of like how to do open source community by open source communities. It's open source. You can join and add your 2 cents and help us edit, help us add materials. But I'm working on a chapter specifically about incentivizing and rewarding contributors to open source projects and communities. And this chapter specifically follows in the guidebook. It follows a chapter on what motivates participants to join open source projects and communities. Why do people feel motivated to join? Some, express intrinsic motivations, some express extrinsic motivations. But my comment to Jonathan in the chat, who asked, I don't have a big budget for swag, right? I'm kind of, we've got a small community. My community is centered around a plugin. My first question is always, do you know what motivates your contributors to contribute to your project? Because what you want to do is not reward your participants with what you think they would want to be rewarded with, but reward them with what you think motivates them to participate, right? So if someone's motivated to participate in your project because they feel it's a great way to build their professional network, then you might want to think about ways you can reward contributors by, for example, making them contributor of the month, or asking them to do your, a spotlight interview for your Twitter feed, right? Or, here's our community member spotlight. Or if you have the funds, sponsoring their appearance at a conference, like All Things Open, right? Sponsoring their ticket to ATO so they can build that professional network. If they're motivated by developing a peer network, and learning and developing their Python skills, then maybe you reward them by matching them with a mentor, by saying, introducing them to a longstanding community member and saying, hey, this person is an up and coming star. I really, really would love if you take this person under your wing and show her how you do what you do. Right? I mean, what motivates contributors to participate in your project is what's going to help you determine how to reward those folks. Very, very, not to knock the t-shirt and swag model. Totally don't, some people feel motivated to join a community because they want a sense of identity and they want a sense of community camaraderie. And if you reward them with ways to visually kind of demarcate and signal their affiliation with a group, whether it's opensource.com or your favorite project, they're going to be motivated to achieve that, that symbolic marker of community affiliation. So it's not like just saying like very few people do it for the t-shirt, because it's not just the t-shirt, it's ability to signal your affiliation with a group. But I wouldn't start with or end with swag as a your incentivizing mechanism, because that's but one mechanism that I'm working on this chapter in the Open Source Way about. So I would encourage you to check it out. You can also ping Ray in the chat. Ray's one of the editors of the Open Source Way, a longtime community member who's contributed greatly to the book. So hit us up and please, let's continue this conversation, because it's something I care care very deeply about. Thanks for the chance to do the quick pitch, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's really good work, and I already see someone, Phyllis is stoked on it, so that's awesome. And yeah, like like Brian said, if you want to contribute to that, please, I guess you can just add it to a pull request, and maybe they'll accept it if it's good stuff. But you know, I'll give a quick example of, you know, Brian, what you mentioned is you got to take the guesswork out of it. So you can't just assume that, oh, someone wants a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, or, you know, I don't know what the latest thing is, sweatpants, masks, whatever. And so when I was building out our Red Hat sysadmin community, enable sysadmin, we actually kind of already had some of our core contributors, but we didn't have the official program yet called Sudoers. So for those of you that are non-technical, sudo is a term that gives you kind of root-like powers on the Linux command line terminal. And so it's kind of a clever name for the program based on the audience who's participating in it. And so we actually just did user interviews. We sat down, me and my team and I sat down, interviewed 14 people. We had on our side, had kind of just a Google survey that we had all the questions, and so we could have all the answers in one repository on the back end. And literally one of the questions was like, what kind of swag do you like? And we would ask them what kind of training and certification is important to them. And we ask them what kind of conferences they attend. So anyway, I see David, you've had your hand raised. Do you want to chime in? You're on mute, or your mic's not working.
Something's up, David.
Breaker. All right. Not yet. Man, you and your Linux system, getting everything to work. Well, hey, we'll go over to Guy here and then come back to you, David.
Ouch, that's harsh, Shibby. I will say kind of to a little bit to Brian's point, and also something that I know you've done, Jason, is, you know, establishing that community, I don't know how to describe it, that community feeling. You have gotten together opensource.com contributors at ATO before for dinner. I don't think you're doing it this year because of the COVID situation, but you know, a little thing like that, not only it to your point, Brian, gets that sense of belonging, but it's really gives you a chance to interact with those other community members that you might not get a chance to do all the time. And I found that to be, you know, I made, also to your point, Brian, I made professional and personal connections in just those dinners that I think were kind of worth the price of admission, so to speak, to contributing to the community, even though I was probably going to do it anyway.
All right, and I somewhat misspoke. I meant to say the highly customized Linux system. Whatever David's running over, he's laying like experimental stuff over there. I don't know what he's got. Is your mic working yet, David? No.
Debian for life.
Man, this is going in the wrong direction. Does he need to rejoin maybe to speak?
Yeah, you're not muted, David. You might want to maybe try and rejoin. Another option could be rejoining on your phone, if that's easier.
Cool. Yeah, so Guy, I think the in-person dinners are great because we're not doing it this year because of COVID, but you know, just a lot of people want to be, you know, part of this network, right? They want to be part of this you know, this club, and just having the in-person thing, I think is magical, right? When we had our first one of our first sessions, I think Jono, you were there. We invited all the opensource.com moderators to Raleigh in advance of the All Things Open conference, and we pretty much have like a strategy session with them. And I just remember like the morning, we were just kind of going around the room doing introductions, and we asked people why, you know, to share why they joined the community, why they're participating, and just like I was just standing in the back, and I just had the biggest smile on my face from ear to ear, just listening to, you know, folks like David say, you know, I do this because I get to learn more, I get to interact with some amazing people, and for me as just a person bringing those people together, like that's just where I get my energy, and that's where my passion comes out. And it's just amazing to have that. So Amber, I want to, do you want to chime in on anything here? I want to give you a chance.
I was just thinking about how often many people think their community is motivated by money, like that if you can write them a check. However, I've learned in the last couple of years, especially on the cybersecurity side of things, they're not motivated by money. They're motivated by some other thing, whatever that happens to be. And one of the things that we learned quickly was we ran some package contests where we were offering like 10K as a prize. We still didn't get a lot, but when we just rolled to coins and said, hey, if you submit a coin between this time and this time, or you submit a package between this time and this time, you're going to get a coin at the end of this. And we had more participation picked up. It wasn't about the money, that sort of stuff. It was about, the thing that they could have in their hand and go, look, I've got this coin, like a challenge coin. And like that the military does and stuff. So that turned out to be a really surprise on my part, that that people weren't always motivated by this check that you could give them to say keep their lights on, but there was a check that you could write that was motivational, that had nothing to do with being able to deposit it in the bank. And I think that's getting back to, do you know your community? Do you know, because not every community is the same, and not every community wants to be rewarded the same way. Just like,
Right.
Jono, what might make you happy? I'll be like, I don't care about that. What make, all of us, the 6 of us here, all could have some differing thing, that while we would be participating anyway, if that one little other motivational thing on top of it, that's what's the hook. That's what makes you, okay, I'm tired, but I'm going to do it anyway, instead of I'm tired, I'll get to it tomorrow. Like there's those little incentives that done right, people are going to give up more than just the free time they have. They're going to give up their exhausted time, their excited time. They're like, whatever, just for your thing. So I think you can't stress enough the psychology of knowing your community and really, doing little things along the way. Try this, and if it doesn't work, try something else, and you figure out that magic formula. Like, don't be afraid to experiment and find the magic formula.
Yeah.
On that note, Amber, like you mentioned the psychology, I've just been thinking, it's interesting when we look at motivating anyone into action, right? There's all manner of things that people can and should do. But I think an industry that's done this really, really effectively has been the app and game industry, right? Like, you'll take a game like Angry Birds and it will become a global sensation in a very, very short period of time. And I think if you look at the reason why, for example, we're also hooked into Twitter, the Twitter app on your phone, or the Facebook app on your phone, or TikTok, or whatever it is that people are into, or it's games, is because they regularly deliver a dopamine hit at the right time. And if you look at games, usually it's that there's a challenge that is just right for you. So it's not too big of a challenge. It's not too easy of a challenge. And then there is a very clear reward. And in games, of course, it's always just like, you get coins, you get tokens, you go up to a new level, something along those lines. It triggers that reward part of your brain. And again, without turning this into an opensource.com love fest, I think part of what the team has done well there is that in the active participation, certainly this is my personal experience, and I'm sure David would agree with this, is that there was always something new to challenge you. And it was just out of reach, but it was close enough. And and what that creates is like this sense of momentum that nothing's getting in your way. Like you're always moving forward. You're always moving towards something. And I wonder if a framework that can wrap around this is just to keep, instead of like, oh, here's a big new thing you can do. You can go and speak at All Things Open, or here's a big new thing you can go and write half a book or whatever it might be. Is if there's like 30 things that you can do, each of which are just a tiny little bit more complex than the last one, that move you towards, so you feel that sense of growth and momentum. And when you have that reward mechanism that's attached to it, it essentially replicates what the app and game industry are doing.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I have too many devices attached to my system, so
And none of them are plugged in.
Yeah. but I think I've got a little bit different view than a lot of people do, because I'm essentially allegedly retired, and I stopped working for W-2s more than 10 years ago. And I've worked for a lot of good companies, and I've worked for some bad ones. And one of the things I've told Jason in the past, and he alluded to it already, was that I have received more recognition from writing for opensource.com and Enable Sysadmin than I ever did from most of the companies that I ever worked for. And it doesn't have to be much. I mean, I got paid money for working in those other places, and I haven't been, paid a cent for writing for opensource.com or Enable Sysadmin, but I've received thanks from people. I've received the swag, which I think is fun, and I think does contribute to my desire to continue writing. But I have written over 100 articles for opensource.com, and I think around 35 for Enable Sysadmin. And I think the thing that motivates me most is the sense of community that I get from writing for those two organizations, and being part of a group, or two groups really, in those organizations that are smart, that can help me learn new things, that by reading their contributions to those organizations, that I can learn from that, and it gives me new ideas, not only for trying things out on my computer here, but also for writing new articles. And I've kind of slacked off in the last few months. I'm writing book number 5 now, so I've been working on that a lot. And I feel very strongly that the sense of community is what, for me, is the biggest motivating factor. The sense of community with people who have similar interests, and from whom I can learn a great deal.
And David, I would also add, I think, you get a lot of motivation from your readers, right? So people write stuff because they want it to be read. And when you get feedback from your readers, it's kind of a bonus, right?
Absolutely. I do get some interesting emails from readers around the world. And I think that's one of the cool parts, because it's not just a local audience, it's a worldwide audience. And I think getting some of that feedback from people all over has been very interesting, and a great learning experience in itself. And it gives me more ideas. Jason, if we got another couple minutes, I'd like to talk a little bit about the I ran a thing on opensource.com. It was a contest where people would contribute, would send in code based on a set of specifications that I gave, and we got code from all over the world. And there were some people who contributed some amazing little bits of code. There are incredibly smart people all over the world that sent in their little bits of code for this contest. And to me, feeling a part of that huge community worldwide is very motivating, very motivating.
Awesome. Maybe want to change gears here a little bit. I want to ask the participants here, we were talking about motivations earlier. If you are willing to share, maybe in the chat, just kind of share some of the things that motivate you to participate in whatever community you participate in. And while that's going on, maybe I'll put Brian on the spot. Do you want to give any color commentary onto what you're talking about in the chat, so to those listening in today?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was saying David is not allegedly retired; he's allegedly retired. But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, so the one of the things I said earlier in the chat was about money. Oftentimes, money is not a compensation mechanism that's available to folks, whether for budgetary or for legal reasons. But one way to move past that conversation, or at least to entertain it and keep your contributors motivated, is to ask, like, I can't offer you that, but what would you use the money on? They might say, like, well, I really want to sign up for this coding camp, or I really want to, I really want to go to this conference, or I really want to, you might be able to figure out what motivates that person and then construct a reward model that matches that motivation and compensates that motivation outside of monetary exchange, right? So it's a small thing, but it might help, right? And again, for me, the trick here, the real community architectural trick, is matching motivation with a reward that adequately compensates for that motivation, right? That rewards that specific motivation. So if in David's words, if it's a sense of community that motivates David to participate, what reward models can I construct as a community architect that provide a sense of community and a deepening sense of community and communal identity when somebody contributes in a way that the community wants to reward? Because you can also incentivize and reward the things that you don't want to see, and then you get into an anti-pattern that kind of destroys your whole mechanism. But when someone who has motivation X performs function Y that our community feels like is valuable, how can we use reward model Z to compensate for motivation X, right? And that's sort of the equation for me, right? Is matching those things, and it's difficult. It's not a pristine, clear science, but like in all things, you've got to start with your community and understand as best you can the reasons that someone or a group of people are contributing. And the frequency with which they're contributing, and then meet them where they are to try to elevate their contributions, if that is indeed their goal. Some don't. Some folks don't want to elevate their contributions.
Thanks, Brian. And thank you all for sharing your motivations in chat. This is really fun to see what you all are into. Guy, do you want to give some? I saw you were trying to scroll back. If there's so much chat happening, I can't get back far enough. Did you want to give some color commentary to your comments to Ray?
Yeah, I mean, Ray and I have known each other forever, and I liked what he was saying because I was just having a conversation today with somebody about imposter syndrome and how that was a challenge for them. And I think Ray's point was, some people are a little bit not afraid, but they don't want the spotlight, or they're concerned about the spotlight because they feel like they don't deserve it, the imposter syndrome thing. And it just came to me when he was saying that well, maybe the solution to that is to kind of lump a lot of the contributions in a similar area together and kind of celebrate everybody, because then it doesn't feel to that person like, oh, I'm being singled out and I'm not worthy. And it's kind of funny, we joke I'm not worthy, but it's a real thing. And I told this person I suffer from imposter syndrome. I mean, ask Jono how many times I've told him about, God, how do I be an executive director at Oasis? I feel horribly, like an imposter syndrome thing. So I just think maybe lumping those contributions that are in a certain area together is a way to celebrate those people without them kind of feeling, like they're being a spotlight shown on them that they don't deserve, even though they do deserve it, but kind of a way to mitigate that.
Cool. And then we've got just about 10 minutes left in the session. I would encourage, if anyone has specific questions that you want us to maybe try to cover in the remaining time, please add those to chat, and hopefully we'll kind of catch those before our time is up. I wanted to add one more thing, maybe to add, Guy, to what you're saying is one of my kind of default rules is when you have your anniversary. So like opensource.com turned, I think 11 years old this year. Actually, yeah, it'll be coming up this in January. Anyway, regardless of the date, right? That's using your anniversary to celebrate your community, right? It's not to pat yourself on the back and say, hey, we've been here for 5 years, we've been here for 10 years. We took that as an opportunity to say, let's celebrate the people that actually make this happen. I remember Brian, I don't know if you were if you were working with us at that point, but opensource.com turned 2 years old, and we decided to give away a t-shirt. Well, by the time we sent out an automated email, like at 3 o'clock in the morning. By the time we got into the office, like all the t-shirts, Europe had all the t-shirts, right? So we had to make some more t-shirts happen. But it was just kind of that notion gave us a sense of like, hey, this is a way to celebrate your community, and it's not just singling out any one person. It is, we for Enable sysadmin, we have about 20 core contributors, and we just kind of sent them a random gift. Well, it was very strategic, but it was kind of, we sent them like a cool, like USB plug-in port for their laptops. And they weren't expecting it, but it was just like, hey, we turned 2 years old. You helped us get here. Thank you very much. Right. And that's what it was really all about. Let's see, any questions come through chat? Love the motivations. This is great.
No questions, just lots of comments, which is great.
Yeah. So Jason, real quick though, I do want to give a plug to Brian, since I got to work with Brian on Open Source Way in writing a chapter for one of those books. Yeah. And I love the fact that, you kind of mentioned earlier, taking care of your community members and taking care of your writers, because Brian did a tremendous job of taking something that I had done when I was in my previous role and kind of tried to write it up and helped me craft it and helped me kind of get through that process. So, I think that is a huge part of it, being able to make people feel not only the rewards that we're talking about here, but make them feel like, hey, there's, I don't have to go this alone, especially, if you've got that imposter syndrome, or you've got that feeling like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can, write a whole chapter for this, or how I can write a whole book. I mean, I give Jono a hard time all the time, right? How do you write 3 books, 4 books, or whatever it is you've written? But, some of us are better at that than others. So if those of us that aren't, folks like Brian, making that happen in the community, I think is a really important thing.
Yeah, and I get so this reminds me of a cool story. Brian and I worked together on building out community for the Open Organization, which was a book written by former CEO, RedHat CEO Jim Whitehurst. And it's kind of a funny story because in a very kind of RedHat, in a very Jim way, Jim didn't come to us say, hey, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. He was like, hey, I wrote this book. It's called The Open Organization. And we want to build community around it, and you guys are smart, go figure it out, right? So it was very much kind of like, he's like, spoiler alert, at the end of the book it says, if you want to continue this conversation, head on over to opensource.com. And we're like, okay, cool. We got like 3 months to figure this out. And I mean, we were just doing, I see Nicole's, I think I saw Nicole was in chat, but we like started doing these Twitter chats, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing, to be honest with you, but we figured it out and we iterated on it. We kind of had this, most of the people on this Zoom participated in some of those. I think there's 7 chapters in the book. So we had a 7-week sprint where we were doing a Twitter chat once a week. We iterated every week. We learned something new. We modified. We made it really successful. And now, I like doing talks on how to run Twitter chats and of that nature. And I think the best part, so I would just say they were an hour long, and I literally at the end of the hour, I felt like I just did this workout. I'm just sweating. I've got all this emotional energy, the positivity. And the favorite part of those Twitter chats was when we would do introductions and people would take selfies. And then once the animals started getting into the selfies, like the game over, like it was just that was community happening right there. So I don't know, Brian, do you remember some of that?
I do. Yeah. I mean, and it was a really cool manifestation of community. And, I remember when we would start, we would say, all right, let's see who's out there today. Right. Cause you don't know, and so often, a community is just a word you use to describe an amorphous, collection of hypothetical people, but it's in those moments when they materialize and you kind of say, let's see, right? Let's see what happens. And when you get rewarded like that, it's extraordinarily rewarding.
Yeah. I remember we had this guy that was like from Costa Rica that he was like, I'm poolside, but I'm chatting with you guys. And I'm like, man, how come I can't be poolside chatting with these guys? Like, we're in the command center in some room in the middle of the office. Right. So, but also too, that also reminds me of, like, particularly with the open org ambassadors, like, you know, we've already said that time is one of the most valuable things, but like also other people's time is valuable too. So getting some of the ambassadors in front of Jim Whitehurst, who is an extremely busy person, I mean, that is gold, right? If you can pull something like that off of like making that connection or giving them, I know, Jono, I think, you know, we've got you like one-on-one time with Jim at some point, and like, that's just super valuable, right? And just to have that access and, you know, David, you know, you could remember this, we brought in executives from Red Hat during the opensource.com moderator sessions, and just for them to kind of hear straight from, you know, the people that are doing all the hard work, and also kind of, you know, a little bit of reward too. So we've only got a few moments left. Any famous last words for people? Anything you want to share?
This is not a famous last word, but the only thing I would say is, I know this has kind of been touched on a bit in this session, is often rewards, it always ties back to swag and physical items. But I do think, just to underline again, the importance of that personal touch of a sense of care and attention in a community, which is hard because, you know, it's easy when there's 12 people in your community, but when you've got 1,200 people in your community, it's difficult to scale that up. But I think that is the in my mind, the most critical ingredient here. And it does get hard. It's a great problem to have. I remember when I was at Canonical, and, you know, the Ubuntu community was growing so rapidly that we had a great problem, which was, how do you maintain the personal touch while also dealing with thousands and thousands of people? And luckily, you know, not many communities have that problem, because most communities, I think, tend to remain relatively manageable, which is a good thing. I think there is a problem with growth to that level. But I would just say, like, the intrinsic rewards, like the recognition, the thanks, the appreciation, the one-on-ones with people like Jim, getting people together, that to me is what people love about communities. So
awesome.
And
David,
sometimes I think it's just a personal touch, because sometimes I've received swag with a handwritten note, and I really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, that does not scale. That only scales with multitasking at your desk, or if you have that. So and making sure you spelled our name right, that's also very important too. So yeah,
awesome.
I have a story about that, but I won't go into that right now. So hey, I just want to thank everyone for sticking with us throughout the day. It's great to see, great to have you all here as co-hosts and panelists. Great to see everyone in chat, and lively chat. So thank you for being for participating and being lively. And this was a lot of fun. And Jono, thanks for allowing us to have the session.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone for joining us throughout the sessions today. We really appreciate it. I know you've got a million different things that can grab your attention right now. So thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts. These sessions have all been recorded, and I will defer to Todd and his band of misfits for when they were and how they will be published and presented. But yeah, it's lots of really useful insight. I've learned a ton today, so appreciate it. All right, go forth, everyone. Be safe. Take care of yourselves and your families.
See everybody.
Hey, y'all. Thanks, Jono.
All right, take care. Thanks, Amber. Bye-bye.